Paul, is there any question or statement you would like to make before we start asking you questions?
Keep the clock on me, Deb. You know, I can talk, but I just want for a couple of minutes, I want to put some context to why I'm here today. I don't, some of you know my background at MKP, Boyson for sure, and I think Deb, having worked with them. So I've been involved it'll be 25 years in January since I initiated. The great focus of that time has been both locally with iGroup, with the old council when we were in a community. I had 4 or 5 terms of service on the council, largely as the training coordinator, more recently as the leader body chair, and staffing weekends, then ascending to certified leadership, and then leading weekends as a co-leader. That's worked out very well for me. As you saw in my answers to your questions, why am I here? MKP made a huge difference in my life. Helped me survive some very bad times. And it's a payback for a number of years, and I've gotten a lot of richness out of helping other men figure out some of the things in their lives. So I'm nearing the end of that 15 years of service as a certified leader. It hasn't happened yet, but I can tell it's closing in. I'm 76, and I can do the work, the energy, and the energy levels that it requires are changing for me. I just missed a weekend because I had a kind of upper respiratory infection that I would have been laid up for 36 hours. It was a week. So I'm just giving you some context. What's motivated me to take an interest in the USA board are a couple of things. Some displeasure with the USLB board, where I'm active. I'm an active USLB member. But that's not the big movement. I mean, the USLB is a constituency, just like the Elder Circle is, and it works within its own world there. I think that what needs to happen, or what's going to happen for MKP USA to be sustainable, is going to happen at the highest level, which is the USA board and the committees at the USA level. I have strong experience in board work and legal work and financial work. You saw that in my material if you had a chance to look at it. I can talk at length about that when you ask your questions. It's like we say when we bless a man for his time is now or his time is not now. This is my time. This is my time to offer at least my services at the USA level, given my strengths in organizational work. I represented 501c3s. I sat on a number of not-for-profits. And I'm inspired. Look, there has to be inspiration. I'm inspired by MKP, what it's meant to me, what it's meant to so many men. And why did I join the board of Ed in 1987? I had children coming through the school system. I stayed for 16 years. I chaired it for a long period of time. I was inspired to help create a better world for them. And I'm inspired to help MKP to whatever extent I can grow and work its way through its struggle. There's struggles now, there'll be struggles later. There's always struggles. So that in a nutshell is why I'm here. And if I have some questions at the end, I'll ask them. And I'm going to pass the baton back to you people.
Thank you, Paul. Gentlemen, whenever you'd like to start.
Sure. You talk about, first of all, Paul, I want to congratulate you on the service you've given for so many years, particularly to the nonprofits. I think we're in that world and you've done so much and it's recognized. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm interested, you talk about helping to lead MKP to the next level of development. How would you do that? And what are the kinds of things we should do to go to the next level?
Well, if I'm elected to the board, my first job is to listen, not talk, and find out what's going on what's the energy? What are some of the plans? I don't have anything dramatic to offer, Elliot, until I indoctrinate myself and I find out what's happening. And even then, I'll have some opinions, but I don't have a magic satchel of answers. Sustainability. I think I've made that very clear in my answers. Are we a sustainable organization, both financially, structurally, organizationally, mission-wise? I think we can be. I'm not sure that we are financially. I don't know enough about that, but I hear the struggles, and I've raised money. You know, that's what, you know, I was a business lawyer, and I ran businesses that needed a lot of financial support to work, you know, for-profit businesses. I get it. And I believe that's where it starts. So in terms of the future, who are we and what do we want to do? Are we communicating to the rank and file? When I read the strategic plan that Deb sent me, it was very interesting, and it helped me understand some of the picture that I didn't know about. Maybe that's me. Maybe I wasn't looking and reading everything. Probably wasn't. So where are we going to be? Are we a mile wide and an inch thick, which concerns me? Is that where we're headed for? Do we have some executable plans? I'm concerned about any organization I'm involved in that has great vision, and I scratch my head about what's the executable plan. So that's where I'm at right now, Elliot, and that's all I can offer for if I'm a new board member.
Thank you, Paul.
So I know you've been a very generous contributor, especially to Florida in the past. Thank you. Talk to me about fundraising. Primarily our revenue, as you know, is from training revenue and fundraising. Tell me what you would do to either expand into different lines of revenue, or in particular, how to enhance our fundraising, doing it differently than we do now.
Well, I think you're moving in the right direction. We're moving in the right direction by overcoming how we've undervalued the NWTA. I know we've raised the bar in most communities, you know, to a higher ask. You know, New England's a little different, being a CCP community, but even in New England, we need to recognize at $700, $800, $900, this is the bargain of a lifetime. I mean, I've participated in other self-help organizations on weekend programs. It's $1,500, it's $1,800. I went out to do a program with George Durrani's group out in Arizona. You know, that was 1,000 plus. I mean, and men found the money. So I admire and I congratulate the board for moving it up. In terms of collateral source of revenue, and I had this conversation with George Faison yesterday about grant writing and grants, and I'm glad to hear that MKP USA has sought some grants. It doesn't sound like that's been a success. That's been successful yet. I'm a big believer in fighting tooth and nail for grant money. I've been in organizations. I know how hard that is. I mean, crawl over burning coals to get them. But there's so much money out there. And I don't know, Deb, I don't know if that's doable. I don't know if we're asking for too little, too much, but there's a lot of grant money, and it's not all national money. There's regional money. I think that should be explored. And if it's already been explored, then pardon me, and you know, thank you for trying it. But I grant money. And how do we, and I say this as a question because I don't have the answer. How do we incentivize the heavy hitters in this organization who can write the kind of checks I did, you know, before the pandemic every year? How do I get people to write 10 and 15 and 20? I don't have to have a lot of people doing that, but I know those people are in the organization, and there's so much money shadow, in my judgment, in the baby boomer generation. It's so pervasive that how do we overcome that? Because those are the men with the money. And, but I think that's an area that needs to be explored. So that's a couple of things. And beyond that, I believe in creative effort and collaboration with other groups, whatever. I don't want to start marketing MKP paraphernalia in a clothing line, but anything else that makes sense, I'm willing to take a look at.
Gentlemen, I have a follow-up. Paul, what do you think about our membership drive and initiative? Would you keep it, retain it, change it? What do you think about that?
I don't know yet. I brought membership to New England in 2005. It passed at an annual gathering 35-0, and then it fell entirely on its face. It just died a certain death, and the response was, we don't have to pay to be in this organization. I wonder if enough years have passed, Deb, that the mindset, particularly with millennials and ex-geners, has reached a point, yeah, it's not a freebie. It's not a freebie to get what we get here, even if we don't dip into the well every day. I think membership is right. We have a guy in New England who you know, Brad Morowski, who's pushing membership locally. But I don't want it to be a local thing. I want it to be a national thing. So yes, and that's going to take some time because we've inculcated the concept, well, you don't have to be a member or send $1 or send $3. And again, that's undervaluing the opportunity to be a member of MKP. So yes, membership should be a focus, should be one of membership, the NWTA, grants, affiliated organizations. I don't know. There's so many possibilities. Should we be guest speakers and get an honorarium at places? I mean, I just think there's a world of opportunities, and membership would be a major pillar to that. I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brody, you and I have been in circles for a long time together, my friend. And I'm super close to a number of the men who are on the current council who sit in my circle with me, and who act as mentors and mentees and dudes in my life. And I want to ask a question based on those relationships. How would you characterize how you communicate about the Mankind Project to the council in New England, especially to these young guys who haven't been around the project all that long?
How would I grade myself, and what are the components of that, maybe?
I'm asking, is there shadow in the way that you communicate about the Mankind Project USA to men who are currently sitting in the New England Council?
Yes. Yes,
And how would you?
I have not been as inspiring at the council level as I have in prior terms of service. And I have some ideas on why that's happened. And a lot of it is, for me, a lot of it is I'm totally burnt out in Zoom communication. And I'm not from that generation, Boyson, as you know. And I'm delighted that our steward brought us together last December and we had a live meeting. I mean, it was fabulous. And I thought my communication at that meeting was much stronger, much more positive, much more open. And I'm good on a one-on-one basis. I'm working with the new enrollment coordinator who's got a new position, needed a lot of help in this last cycle, one-on-one. I'm inspired that guys like Ray Crowley's involved. Andy's done a great job. Seth, Marty Hellman. And to some extent, I'm burnt out at that level. And I need to pull away. I took on the leadership of the leader body at a time when nobody would do it, again, 2 years ago. And it wasn't, it was to keep the leader body alive and afloat in New England. And I'm done, and somebody else has taken it over. So I'd say I'd give myself a B, maybe even a C+. whereas earlier terms of service on this council in 2002 and 2008, 2013, I was much more involved. I was much more inspired and in New England. That's a good observation.
Let me stick with, so yeah, I totally resonate with some of that. And there have been specific, so there's an us and themness around information that's been stuff that's come back to me about, Brody was saying that MKP USA is a black hole. That MKP, that he wouldn't give another dime to MKP USA. That MKP USA is not transparent. And these are young guys in the work who, like, they don't know. Right. So, and now I think it's good that you're sitting here with us looking at the MKP USA board, right? So you'll have a better understanding of what's going on. But is there anything in that, like anything that you want to own in there?
My history at this level has been real up and down. I had a very good experience with the Risk Management Committee, if you still have that as part of the USA subcommittee. I had a really great experience with those folks, those guys, a few years ago when we were working on I was working on a project. I had also some very negative experiences where I put in dozens, if not 100+ hours on a project that just disappeared, disappeared at the USA level. So I have, I won't candy coat this. I've had some real concerns about where is the USA board, what's going on, and I guess I ran at the mouth. I'm sure I have. And is that leadership? No, it isn't. I wouldn't do that in the USLB level. I wouldn't do that on a weekend. I wouldn't do that with a staff. So I'm capable of expressing my irritation, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention, because I'll be mindful of that. But I have had some serious concerns at the USA level. How is it operating? Why don't we know what's going on? Who works where? I don't even know where anybody is. On an individual basis, I work with Deb, that's great. I work with Greg Gondren, that's great. I work with you. I call Jarvis if I need something. And I've had some real heavyweight battles with national leaders over things like Minhan experience, over here in Connecticut. It's taken a toll on me. I'll tell you, it's taken a toll on me. So that's stuff I need to get past if I'm going to be an effective board member. But I appreciate you bringing it to my attention.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Well, Paul, I appreciate your honesty in stating where you've been, where you are, but I heard Boyson ask you the question, basically, have you badmouthed MKP nationally, USA nationally? And you said yes. And the immediate reaction I had is, did Paul just disqualify himself for consideration? And I don't say that because I'm making a judgment that you did or you didn't. But there might have been another route to take in terms of understanding what USA was doing rather than, express emotional response. And had you thought about understanding national better rather than make a judgment?
Well, that's occurred to me in the last about 18 months, despite that I may have said something in last December. Under Lonnie Hamilton, Lonnie's appeared at the USLB National Gathering. I was very impressed by his work. He brought a vision 2 years ago, last year also, to LOMG that got me to sit up and think, well, wait a minute, there's more here than I'm aware of. And I had some conversations with him. I'm close with George Faison, and I have been for a number of years. And when George asked me to take an interest in this board seat, we had a lot of conversation about it. And I said, I need to hear from you, George. Where are you headed as the chair? If you know, where's this going, and what do you see happening? And George is impressive. I mean, I don't want to. I'm glad he's not here to get inflated, but he is impressive. He understands, in my humble opinion, where's the triage? What needs to happen next? So, look, if the board's going to be populated by people like you, who I know, people like George, who I find inspiring, people like Lonnie, who impresses me, I'm willing to get on board. I'm more than willing to get on board. I'd be excited to be on board, because at the end of the day, if MKP USA is not sustainable, the world's lost. You know, we've lost something really important to mankind. You know, that sounds grandiose, but that's how we feel about it. And Elliot, and so take it for what it's worth. And that's who I am. I'm not gonna tell you I'm not somebody who I am, but I do understand running at the mouth is not productive, and I'm guilty as charged from time to time.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your response. Deb?
So Paul, I thought you explained well your experience with what I would say was a historical, not optimal relationship between the U.S. leader body and the board, and a lack of communication therein. And I think both entities have been working on improving that. What's the ideal governance setup for our organization for the USLB and the board, in your view?
Well, I'd like to, you know, and again, I don't, there's so many circles now, and I've tried to understand this circle and that circle and that circle and that circle. I would like the MKP USA board to feel its oats and be very clear that the buck stops at USA. We are the parent. It is the parent, and it's a compassionate and powerful board, and it's going to help things get done. The USLB, by its nature, is made up of a lot of ego, an incredible amount of ego. These are all certified leaders. They can drive me insane at times. I'm on a monthly call that Stan Sherman sets up, and it's just fascinating, you know, what I take away from that call. And I'm disappointed that Craig Herring stepped off, and I believe he stepped off the USLB board, their circle, because it was contentious to be there, and he's a gentleman. I hope the next chair, the current chair, has a little thicker skin. To your question, the USLB plays an important role, a very important role. And the USLB needs to know what its role is. It needs to understand the buck doesn't stop with USLB. It stops with USA. And I say that as an active USLB man. I want to avoid the kind of outcome we had with LKS. Now, I know it's a whole different set of circumstances, but I want USA to be in its power, to be compassionate, and to be clear as to what it expects from USLB and what powers USA is prepared to capitate to USLB, what it expects from USLB, and to work collaboratively. I think it's great that George is a certified man. He brings George Faison. He'll bring that experience, has brought that experience to your board. I'll offer that if I'm on the board. You know, I will have sat in both worlds. But to answer your question, USLB, it's a lot of chiefs and not a lot of natives. I mean, that's just the problem. But maybe that's part of what that kind of leadership is, Deb. But I believe it needs to be brought under some degree of understanding as to what specific roles and specific jobs, and maybe to decrease some of these. There's an NWTA circle, there's another circle, there's a USB circle. There's not a clarity, for me anyway, there's not a clarity of where roles lie and where responsibilities begin and end.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And you've said something that other leaders have said to me about it's really hard because the USLB as a group, I think, needs its own self-governance in terms of its interests and its activities within the project, even though it is relating to the board and the broader project. I do think it needs its own self-governance. And what men have said to me is, yeah, we've got a lot of chiefs. We have a hard time with this many chiefs. What I've always said to them is, yeah, but the management of your group is a whole different enchilada. It's not chief stuff. It's really people business stuff. But that's easy for me to say. I'm not in your group. What do you view would be, as you said at the start, I've had some issues, with the MKP board, but also USLB. What do you think is one of the better option for the USLB to manage itself? Is it just finding the right men, or is it design? What do you think?
I think its constitutional structure, its operating agreements are weak. I've made that clear, and I hope we're going to drill into that at LOMG. It has a role that only a full leader can be chair of the circle. That's silly. There's 17 active full leaders. There's 60 or 70 co-leaders, and a lot of those men have a lot to offer. It's that kind of stuff, Deb, that people have to let go of their ego. Men have to let go of their ego. Somebody said, well, a man should be a full leader to make those last minute decisions for an NWTA when he gets the phone call. Okay, that doesn't have to be the chair. I mean, there has to be unpacking of the operating agreements inside USLB to create an environment that lets men step up into their power and into their wisdom, into their talent and into their beauty. That doesn't exist. And then it's finding the right guys. And people, I mean, I could give you names, a name real well. Why doesn't a guy like John Levitt have more responsibility in USLB? Here's a guy with incredible unlimited talent. And I know why he does it, and he can share what he wants, with others, but he shared it with me. It just isn't designed. USLB wasn't designed for the amount of responsibility it has. So it needs to open that up, Deb, rebuild it. It wouldn't take a lot. I'm going to have a voice about that when we get together at the end of February. People don't, I got to be a voice. I got to be a voice in that home where I currently live if I'm going to have any impact. So that's my thought.
That was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank
Gentlemen.
you. I respect that you have a ton of legal and financial experience in what you've been doing. And one of the things that the board currently is just beginning to instantiate a finance committee, board level finance committee. Do you see yourself as being available for that kind of working group interaction at the board?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, look, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be curt about it. Yes, and the reason being, well, for one thing, when I've been on other boards, it's like the first trial by fire is you're on finance. And if you survive that, then you can be on governance, or on the board of ed, then you can be on curriculum, and then you get elected to be chair of the board. But that's number one. Number two, it just takes money. It's money, money, money. Jeff Nishwich and I teach a program called Money Shadow. We developed it during the pandemic, and we offered it around the country to various MKP groups. And you know, like I started out earlier in this conversation, the money shadow is huge. And I have my own, everybody does, but I think I've mastered a good deal of it, and I'm not afraid to try to bring money into an organization. It may not work, and I'm relentless. Once I'm on a chore, once I'm got a goal, I'm relentless in a healthy way. If you tell me we need to raise $5 million in 5 years or $500,000, then we have to figure it out. And we need to be able to tell the membership why we need $5 million or $3 million. They need to understand, and they need to buy in. And then people like you, Boyson, can communicate those messages, those financial messages, in a powerful way. We need stewards, and the stewards have their own strong circle. They need to understand why we need X dollars and where we need it. And if we want to be around in 2030 and beyond that, we got to sell that message internally. And then we can raise them. I have no doubt. Look, there's thousands of us. How are we not able to raise, you know, 7-figure money? We can't. And we just have, we the guys can often internally, you know, be the biggest obstruction. And we at USLB, these guys go back to 1987. Oh, you know, we were in Circle, we were in a pit at, you know, in Milwaukee. And I don't want to hear that anymore. That's not going to keep MKP running what you did, you know, in the pit in Milwaukee in 1987. Thank God. Okay, I'm done. I'm now pontificating. You take over.
Thank you.
Yes, you are. But I've been known to do that too. I have two totally unrelated questions. I have to ask the first because you refer back to your earlier career in hospital and healthcare management. And what issues came up and how did you help resolve them?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of the question, Elliot.
Healthcare management, hospital and healthcare management. Early in your career, you said you're in that field. What kind of issues came up and how did you help resolve them?
Well, I was on the board of a small private psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
And one day, and I was very happy. It was in the 80s, and I was having a great time. And it's local. And it was a renowned small psychiatric hospital. And when I unpacked the numbers, I said, we're not going to be in business. What are we doing here? Well, that's all they needed to hear. And all of a sudden, I'm president of the board. So I learned what happens. I have to be able to step up and walk the talk. So in healthcare, it's been around mental health. My board work for years, my 501c3 was in the mental health field. And we were going to be out of business. And what was going to be the fix? I knew what the fix was going to be. And I had to either convince Hartford Healthcare or Trinity, which is St. Francis, or UConn or Yale, you need to come in and buy this hospital and bring us a lot of money. And that's what we accomplished. So, you know, again, the nearest thing I know about healthcare, mental health care, is when I see my therapist. So I have no practical experience, but I understand the business side of it. And I got that fixed. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I mean about being relentless.
It's an environment I'm very familiar with. And I think you answered it the way you had to because you said one small hospital. I was in a much bigger environment. And the experience was conflict between medical and business, which I'm sure you're fully aware of. And it's a tough area, but it's not different than the things we've been talking about it's afternoon there, all afternoon, about how we deal with differences. You referred to the board, you referred to USLB. And I was just curious to see if you experienced that environment elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Can I have permission to ask one more question? And I'm sensitive to time here. You two all right with that?
Go ahead.
Okay. How should we diversify, Paul?
You know,
What
when
do
I
you mean
read
by
the
diversify?
strategic plan,
What's that, Boyce?
when I read about the diversification and the expansion and growing laterally, my first reaction was, and it has at different times, Elliot, been what happened to helping every man we can get who comes to see us save his life and his family? I mean, where do we really want to be? And when I got on the phone with George the other day, I said, George, I am so old school about MKP. I still believe saving the world one man at a time.
Mhm.
And when I'm on the carpet, you know, at 50 or 60 NWTAs, it inspires me. And I've gotten feedback about, yeah, okay, thank you. You know, I didn't go home and beat up my kids. So I get it, but I'm trying to figure out where we should be. I'm not convinced that we should be. You'd have to tell me what do you mean? Do you mean diversity in terms of membership, DEI? Do you mean men of color, or do you
No,
mean
in
content?
terms of where else can we grow beyond the weekend, beyond the internal trainings we do, beyond increasing membership, beyond more fees for weekend? How do we grow? How do we expand
Our
as
product
an
line.
entity?
Yeah.
Got it.
I think he's talking about our product line. Do we expand up, right?
Yeah.
Do we expand our product line?
Okay. Well, you've already done one
Thanks.
thing that's huge. You've rolled the pit into the fee for the NWTA. So already you're not asking a man who just laid out all kinds of money to fork out a whole bunch more money to enrich his world of MKP. So we start with what we already know. So that's a great move. Build it in, build out membership, build out active membership, because you know, I'll be very candid with you. When I invite a man to an NWTA historically, I hoped he got a great experience out of those 2.5 days. And if he wanted to come to an I group, great. And if he didn't, I hope his life and those around him who he loves and cares about is a better world. Now I see it a little differently. And I see where we got to start with the thousands of men we already have. So they are the basis for how we grow the organization. The issue is a lot of them are baby boomers. So when I look at them, I have a son who's 36. I've got daughters in their 40s, but I have a son who's 36. I look at him and his friends, and I wonder, how do I get them into this organization? They've had really, most of them, like my son, have had a different life experience. They haven't gotten beaten up emotionally, psychologically in their lives like I was. And they're not really inspired to come to an NWTA to fix their world. Not in the way I needed. So the board, where there's more creative people than me, but I like to be part of those conversations. How do we find something that's NWTA light? How do we find a program where, okay, your world doesn't have to be falling apart. You're not coming out of a recovery program. You weren't referred by your therapist or your psychologist, but you just want a better world. So that product, I think, and it doesn't have to cost $1,000. It can be a day and a half. And these are the products, Elliot, I think, and Deb, you asked the question, I'm not sure. I think you did, Elliot. We need products that build off who we are, what we know how to do, that are personal development, but they don't go, these are my words, to the deep dive of how is your life falling apart.
Yeah.
Does that help? I mean, does it give you an idea?
No, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Any further questions, Deb?
Yeah, I
Boyson?
have one. Yeah, I have one.
Please.
I have two questions, actually. Thank you. That was helpful. So you
Yeah.
touched on this both in your answer and your questionnaire, and that is is our purpose and meaning, oh, just as an aside, I always thought men came to the NWTA because of trauma or difficulty or stuckness in life. And Matt Kelly said to me, I came for the adventure. I thought, wow, I hadn't thought of that. And then he said, and then later I uncovered my trauma. But I understand the generational question. So
Yep.
do we just say our NWTA experience for men needs to be changed because younger men have gone through a completely different life experience than the boomers? I agree. So should our focus, just top of your head, should our focus be how do we make that NWTA experience varied in the ways that we can to reach different populations? And you might have a different cost profile. Or do we do that and provide additional trainings experiences for men at different stages beyond the NWTA?
Okay, that's a multi-part question. Let me take the first part.
Mm-hmm.
How do we track men? How do we track the generation of men who are currently, I don't know, pick a number, 30 to 45, 25 to 50? How do we get these men? What's attractive to them? Well, I'll tell you what's not attractive to them is, I'll give one example, is nudity on the weekend. It didn't bother me at all. It doesn't bother most baby boomers. We used to go down to the YMCA in Hartford. We didn't bring a bathing suit. Everybody just jumped in the pool. That's not the world. So, if I introduce this weekend to my 36-year-old son and all his buddies, they're going to look at it and they're going to go, well, wait a minute. Now they may come, they may. So that's an example. So when I sit at a USLB meeting and guys go, well, it ruins the weekend. It made a great difference for me. And I'm being unfair to them, but you know what I mean. I go, if men aren't going to show up, we're not looking for you guys and me. I'm 76. We're not looking for 76-year-old men to show up. I want 36-year-old men to show up. So one, let's get real. And will the weekend be as powerful without nudity, in Paul Brody's humble opinion? Marginally, no, it won't be. But it's not a huge deal. I get a man in there and I can teach him intro to feelings and accountability and get him on the carpet and have him have a win. It's not a big deal. So we got to overcome this embedded idea that what happened in 1987 and 1997 and 2007 is the only way to do it. So that's that piece of it. To the second part of what you talk about, I'm not sure. I want to hear more. I want to be, whether I'm on this board or I'm on an advisory board or I'm just part of a focus group that talks about this. The old guys like me, who I think have a slightly wider perspective than the old guard, who don't think anything should change, I think we're of value to where MKP is going. I need to sit in a room with 30-year-old men and 40-year-old men and 50-year-old men, and I'm running out of decades, 60 and 70-year-old men, but we need to sit in a room, we need to have a focus group, and we need to find out what's going to bring men in, what do they want? And we can make that work, we can make that price efficient, and we got to take out some of these old barriers. And to your point, it's not just about trauma. I guess I wasn't getting there, but thank God my son has not lived through the trauma, as far as I know, that I did. And he'll come, but I can see where it could be a benefit to he and his cohort. It's not just trauma based. So we got to find that product.
And so I really appreciated that. Thank you. Here's my last, I'm going to give you my opinion. You guys can call it my judgments. And then have a question for you. My opinion is that the MKP board has gone through a lot of changes, expanded size. We put more at large members in. We've changed the way after this year, we're going to choose our chair. You referred to it earlier about you go on the finance committee. If you make that, you go to the next one and then eventually chair. Yeah, love that. We need to do everything you said about, here's what I think the board should do. And so it's a work in progress. My judgment is, first off, is that we need the USLB humming along, running itself really great. And I really appreciated your comments about how to get there. I think the board needs to be running along, working great. And then I would like to do the same thing with the stewards and bring up the other constituencies. I'm not insulting the elders, Elliot, but I'm not putting them first up. My judgment is that if we can get the USLB governed very well, the board continuing to understand its own operations governance and where it stands in the organization, and those two working well together, we are 70% on our way. And then we pull in others. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but my point of view then is, as I sit and listen to you, I think, would it be more powerful for my vision and goal of how to get there, to address all the questions and comments we had today, is that Paul Brody is working to get USLB humming and talking to George Faison over on the board, or have Paul Brody on the board. What do you think about all that?
Are you asking me where should I
Where do you think you'd have the most impact on bringing MKP USA into the future, addressing the questions that you raised here?
I think I have a very clear answer on that. It's at the USA level, and I'll tell you why. USA needs to model the type of governance it wants all its constituencies to reflect. And it takes people, candidly, people like me who know governance, who know leadership, know board work, to pull some weight and to do some work and help USA be a really high level operating board. And you probably are, but we don't know it, and that's a communications issue. But to continue to grow at the USA level, and you can't ask USLB to adhere to an operating motif or convention if we're not prepared to give them very clear driving instructions. Here's what you need to do. Here's our governance. Here's what's going to work for you. Yes, you are a constituency. Yes, you are important. I think the organization, it's starting to dawn on me, because I know some of the area stewards. I think the stewards are one of the answers here. They're powerful.
Yeah.
I think this is an untapped group. These guys are, we have a great steward. I've known the stewards in Florida. I know some of the other stewards. I think this is a powerful other wheel that we can bring into play. And
I agree.
you know what? So I'm not going to aspire to be a member of the operating circle at USLB by my choice, because I don't think that's the best place I can be of service. But I think what I do, if I'm on this board at USA, it'll get down there. It'll, the ripple effect is strong enough. I'm still going to be at USLB. I'm still a member of USLB. I still go to LOMG. I'm still on the monthly call. There'll be fertilization. There'll be cross-fertilization. But if I'm going to serve in the next part of my life on a board level in MKP, my choice has been USA. Despite what Boyson said is correct, I've had some nasty things to say, but I understand where I belong, where it's got to happen, and I'm willing to eat my words and do the work. End of speech.
Thank you, Paul.
Boyson, are you complete?
I am. Thank you, Paul.
Paul, any questions
Go
for
ahead,
us?
Deb.
Sorry, Elliot. Elliot and I like to step on each other. Any questions for us?
It's logistical, operational. I've already made my decision that if I'm elected to this board, I'll roll up my sleeves, I'll do the work. I'm never a quitter. I mean, it's just not in my DNA. So I will do the work. If I'm on a committee, I will do the work. I'm hopeful, maybe you already do this. Does this board have any face-to-face gatherings during the year?
Every year the new chair wants a face-to-face gathering.
You have one? Yeah.
No, we don't. And every year they have to encounter, there used to be this asshole who ran finance, who didn't give them money. and said, well, why don't you pay your way? And there were talk about money shadow. There were a lot of tears. In my time here pre-COVID, there was a couple gatherings of the board. Since then, there hasn't been, but there's always been a desire.
Desire.
So my comment is, if we don't meet live, this is Paul Brody.
Mhm.
If we don't get together at least once a year for a couple of days and a night and spend some time together, we're really, it's going to be troublesome. And we really need that kind of, I just think there's so much energy and so much growth in this kind of, and that's the kind of organization we are. I think we need retreats, at least a retreat a year. And I would be relentless about making that happen. I don't care where we have to raise the money. And if I have to put some money out of my pocket to get there, I would contribute. But I think that's my comment. It's my question and my comment. Thank you, Deb. The other stuff will, it'll all shake out.
Thank you.
Thank
To
you.
quote
I'm go-
Paul Brody, back to Paul Brody, money, money, money.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to stop the recording at this point.